Praise be to Jesus. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Um, we have a statement here by an Archbishop who says, critics of Pope Francis are not faithful to tradition. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Those who criticize the teaching of Pope Francis on the basis of former magisterial documents are not faithful to the tradition of the Catholic Church, a high-ranking Vatican official has said. In an interview with Vatican News to mark the 50th anniversary of the promulgation of Veritatis Splendor, Pope John Paul II's 1993 landmark encyclical on certain fundamentals of the Catholic Church's moral teaching, Archbishop Rino Fischella, president of the Pontifical Council for the New Evangelization, said, "There is no foothold for challenging the magisterium of Pope Francis in the light of the previous magisterium." Well, let's see here. This article goes on, and as far as what I can see, he ends up putting his foot in his mouth, one way or another. It's all these vague sort of statements here. Um, I'm going to go down to here, and where he says this. When we speak of truth, he said, we have to always keep in mind a dynamic concept. Now, the word dynamic means changing. So I think he's saying truth changes. And then he says, quote, truth is not a fixed dimension. He added, applying a biological evolutionary model to theological truth. Oh boy. Well, he goes on trying to explain himself here. You could read about all this. Well, what I want to get down to is, you have a basic concept of what the Archbishop has said. All right, so I'll read this part to you. In comments to LifeSite News, Dr. Peter Kawasniewski, who issued an open critique of Pope Francis's change to the Catechism treatment of capital punishment as contradicting both the natural law and the deposit of faith, offered this response to the Archbishop's remarks. Now, this is what Dr. Peter says. All of the proponents of the revolution in moral doctrine always invoke a specious and vague concept of development of doctrine. It has become a mantra by which any position can be defended, so long as it bears some element of remote resemblance, without the need of argumentation or the actual preservance of substance. Remember, the rule given for development is that any new insight must totally respect the truths already attained in their very specificity. So there could be a new insight into Christology, but not such that Jesus Christ ceased to be confessed as true God and true man. Similarly, in the field of morals, there are many new insights into marriage, but none that would ever justify its dissolution or the use of contraception or communion for adulterers. And it is no less true with regard to the death penalty, which, however often or rarely it should be used, is contained within the very power of the state as God's representative in the governance of human affairs. And then he says this: characteristically, Viscella hides in vagueness. Now, this is the Archbishop. Viscella hides in vagueness. We must reiterate how much continuity there is in the development. Translated from Vaticanese, this means we must keep repeating till we're blue in the face that the rabbit we pulled out of the hat is the same as the frog we put in. Using code language, he speaks of putting proclamation before the norm, which means there are no absolute norms that govern proclamation and pastoral accompaniment. Then, in a move familiar from Walter Casper's theology of revelation, truth is a dynamic concept, not a fixed dimension, a living word, therefore not capable of being propositionally expressed once and for all, as in the church, the fide statements and judgments. In this way, rather than having a fixed point of reference for Christian life and thought, which is Viscella's way of thinking, would be closed in on itself, we have a truth that opens up more and more. So this gets back to the dynamic concept of that it's always changing, you know. Whatever this means, it apparently means that we have to be prepared to take a step backwards, therefore renounce the traditional moral teachings of the church for the sake of accompanying our contemporaries. This, again in code language, is what he means by a great work of interpretation, which here translates to a clever work of deconstruction, utilizing points in John Paul II's encyclical as references, but not as indisputable givens. Kawasniewski summed up Viscella's comments saying, "The cumulative effect of Viscella's Orwellian twists and turns is that we can chuck out whatever in Veritas Splendor or Humanae Vitae or Familiaris Consortio, etc., no longer seems to fit with the needs of modern Western people as seen by Pope Francis." You know, this really reminds me, I don't want people to be yelling at me about this, but I have read almost all the messages as they were coming out from Maria Divine Mercy, and I know there's a lot of strong opinions about, you know, she's a false person and whatever. But I remember, you know, reading this the first time, it really struck me how more than one of the messages talked about how this papacy would just play with words and you know, confuse things and, you know, I mean, you know, to read some of these statements that come out from the Vatican people, or even some from just some cardinals and archbishops, you know, some of them are very clear. You know, the ones that support Orthodox Catholicism seem to be very clear. You know, they seem to be very easy to read. They're very straightforward. These things that these people or the clergy that support modernism always seem to, it seems to be so difficult to try to understand what they mean. And, the meaning, according to the Maria Divine Mercy messages, is that it's just playing with words to get people confused. Okay, when you get people confused, they throw up their hands and they stop paying attention, or they just sort of swallow what's going on, you know. This is this kind of statement. I mean, I'm going to leave the link in the description box if you want to read about what exactly this Archbishop is talking about. You know, I mean, I wasn't even going to post this article until I came to where Dr. Peter sort of gave us some understanding of, um, you know, the Vaticanese language. I mean, what is he really saying? I mean, that's what we really want to know. But in all fairness, this is this particular man's opinion, and this is the first article I've seen about this. So, and of course, mainstream Catholic media will just take a totally different look at this and see it from a very different point of view. Um, well, I think that's it for right now. I don't see anything else to talk about right now. I don't see any more new news. So we'll talk to you next time then. Let's see where I'm